and more or less try to phrase the question into the answer just so that I can just do a direct cut to your voice, and then they know what you're talking about more or less, so I don't have my voice all over there and stuff, but I mean, not a whole lot of stuff. I was interested in, like, with the Mexican muralists and that, with their whole movement in the 30s that was kind of more or less taking the art from the bourgeoisie and bringing it back to the people. How do you feel that that's kind of turned into the graffiti art? Do you think that has any implications of what's going on now?
You know, I haven't studied the Mexican mural tradition that much, but I think that a lot of the graffiti writers maybe have that same revolutionary spirit for change. You know, that they look at how art is packaged and sold like such a commodity, and such a small percentage of artists are in galleries, and then all the bullshit politics that go with galleries, and you know, you can get a critic or some critics that think your work's good, and then all of a sudden everyone's fucking, you're famous and you're selling your work for millions of dollars, man, and it might be a piece of shit, right? So I think the graffiti guys are saying, hey, we're taking our art to the street. It's raw, it's uncut, it's unedited, it's real, it's not for sale, you can't buy it. That, I think, you know, I think Ezra Skay, he says stuff like that. I think a lot of them feel that way. They don't want people to be able to buy their work, or really sometimes they don't really even care who sees it. You know, they don't want the cultural elitist type people to even, they don't care if they see their work. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, definitely. That's great.
Okay.
I mean, that's great. Let's see. How do you think, I have this other thing, I'm just kind of just bullshitting questions here, but just kind of ideas of things. Like in Upski's book, Bombing the Suburbs, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I've seen it, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, I've ordered it and haven't gotten it. So.
It's not a print?
Yeah, actually, I don't know what's going on with it right now. I sent him an order, but it never came through. But he mentions like a third wave of graffiti. He sees like the first wave was 30s with the hobos, and Kilroy was here, and the hobo kind of designs of, you know, go this way, go that way on the trains and that. And then the second wave was the late 70s, early 80s hip hop, you know, or origination. And now the third wave he sees is going, you know, to the rural and suburb areas, more or less. How do you feel that media has influenced that? Like, you know, having big, you know, burners in the background of MTV videos, or, you know, different kind of things like that.
Well, that's interesting. That touches on a lot of issues, because like in the Bay Area suburbs, like out here, there's graffiti, but out here they have crews. It's not as much, so if it's usually gone within a day or two, you know, because I've seen graffiti around this area, and it's usually gone the next day. But as far as the suburbs, I think that the more, to me it makes sense, because the more control, and the suburbs they try to put more control on people, and people that come out here kind of like control. They kind of like the gated communities and that. They're just begging. It's like, to me, there's going to be your younger people that are going to be like, hey man, this is so artificial. This is so, you know, it's almost like a paranoid environment. Everyone's just, you know, doesn't want to talk to anybody, and I think that's why the kids out here, some of them I know, are doing their tagging, you know, because for one thing they know that it's way illegal, and it's their way to say, hey, we just think the system's fucked, and what it does, I think, is it empowers the individual, especially kids that are young, they can't even vote. I think graffiti is a way for them not to feel so powerless in our society, because I think everybody kind of feels like that, because we have this huge government and all these corporations that are running the show, and we're just kind of we can't, it's hard to make a difference unless you get a lot of people, the masses, to
Let's have your back.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I don't know if that totally answers
yeah,
the question.
Definitely.
The whole thing about the suburbs makes me think about a lot of stuff, the art of the environment that the suburb tries to create, and the young people, the kids. Maybe it's like this. Maybe some people that get to be adults lose all their. They kind of become big time sheep, you know, and they lose any they buy into the system, and they've bought a lock and key, and they're like brainwashed, and then you get these kids that can still think for themselves, you know. And I think that's maybe the only thing that is alive out in a lot of suburban areas. You got these kids that aren't brainwashed, and you know, just so many people are just riding out the status quo, and they aren't going to want to do any change because they live in a pretty comfortable environment.
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
That's a quote I like that I see a lot these days. That I think it's from a song or something that says, "If you think the system's working, ask someone who isn't."
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like everyone, as long as it's not happening to me.
Oh
it's
yeah,
not a
it's like,
problem.
hey man,
Not my
who cares
backyard.
what goes on in Oakland if you don't live there? type of
Exactly.
thing.
Definitely. I was interested in kind of the code of ethics that came around with that so-called second wave of graffiti, where there was almost like a strict law, and you know, an unspoken law that people knew, you know, about writing over other people's stuff,
Right.
writing on private property. That there, you know, there was reparations to be paid, and there was like some real strict guidelines. Do you think that with the influx of like tagging and you know, scratching in people's car windows or whatever it is, do you think that they've lost that code of ethics, or do you think it might come around again as people start viewing more and more graffiti art as opposed to just the vandalism?
Right. To me, that's a difficult question because graffiti is so uncontrollable. You know, anybody can pick up a spray can or pick up a tool to scratch a window. So, I think a lot of the writers that were involved in my project had those kind of ethics where they'd say, hey, you know, I'll do commercial buildings, I won't do churches, I won't do people's houses, I won't do people's cars or vehicles, but if it's a commercial vehicle and it's making money, then that's different. A lot of them kind of go by that standard. There's always going to be people that are going to be doing stuff like doing cars and doing people's houses, and that's because anybody can do it, you know. And you're going to get maybe some kid that isn't really a graffiti writer. Just because a kid picks up a spray can to me doesn't mean he's a graffiti writer. I think a lot of the kids that aren't into it heavy are the ones doing that kind of vandalism against personal property. That's my point of view. Just the same, it comes from the same place the kids egging houses, egging cars. These guys aren't serious of what they're doing. They're just kind of doing what kids that are 13 years old do, you know. So that type of thing. They get the older writers in their 20s and they've been around. They not only do they respect other writers' work, but they do respect certain types of property and like I say, churches, schools, places like that. Almost everyone I talk like that about pretty much the same thing about those kind of ethics. From the 80s, I guess you would call it. A lot of them still have those ethics.
It's interesting. I almost think that it's kind of like labeling like deviant groups, and that starts from the top and works its way down. That I think there's almost a hierarchy of people that, you know, respect the elders in the graffiti culture, and more or less if these people kind of say, you know, don't even acknowledge these other people that are doing shit like that. They're just going to kind of slowly say, oh, well, you know, if I respect these people, I want to be kind of doing what they're doing in that same respect. But yeah, I definitely understand that. The debatement programs and that, can you tell me more about what you know about kind of ultra conservative groups that have gone to the lengths of harassment and kind of crossed the line with their anti-graffiti programs?
You know, I only have secondhand information, but I've heard about a few sting operations done where somebody put out some media advertisement about a graffiti writer contest, and they had a bunch of graffiti writers show up, and it was the police sting, and they arrested a bunch of people. I don't know where that was. I think it was someplace in California, but I'm not sure. That's all. I've heard about that a couple times. You know, there are there's a couple of people on the internet that are really, I think they do a lot of harmful to the graffiti phenomenon because they're putting out the wrong information. They're really perpetuating the myth about how most graffiti is gang related, and most of these people that are doing graffiti are packing guns and drugs, or both, you know. And I think that's very dangerous, and it's causing a lot of fear. And so in America, your average citizen, when they hear about graffiti, they get scared. They think crime, gangs, it's all the same stuff. It's the same kids doing all the same stuff. And I think that kind of propaganda, the motive behind it is to sell these anti-graffiti products that we were talking about before. You know, it's like, let's get the people scared, man, and they'll get on this anti-graffiti bandwagon, like in San Jose, in cities like that. They have all these communities. I'm not saying San Jose is putting out this kind of propaganda, but there's a lot of very organized community volunteer programs in a lot of the big cities. Denver, San Jose, LA, Oakland has a pretty big one. And to me, it'd be interesting to see what people would think when they saw some of the real beautiful pieces that are in the areas that they usually won't go to. And that's what I try to do in my book, and I think that's what the guy that did Graffiti Verite did, and I think that's why people got so excited, because they go, wow, I've never seen that stuff before. You know, because graffiti in this culture definitely is not, by most people, considered an art form, and that to me is a real injustice. You know, there's a difference between someone tagging a stop sign and someone doing something like this, you know, these pieces that are, you know, awesome. You know, what else can you say about them? Powerful, not only beautiful art, colors, design, but it's the message. There's usually a very political or very strong social message that has to do with most graffiti that, you know, to me it cuts through a lot of the bullshit, because when everybody, if anyone's got a brain now when they read the paper, we know that, hey man, they're just telling us a little front, there's a lot of shit going on that we don't know. Every story that comes through the media, the news, and the paper, and we don't really know what's going on. We just know there's an event happening there, and these people are involved, but we don't know what the fuck's going on, basically. And I think people are really tired of that. And I'm not saying graffiti's the answer to it. You know, graffiti's always going to be there, but I see like maybe my son's generation, the way the media is going now, in Time magazine even, everything's becoming so tabloid, and all these tabloid type show, it just isn't going to last in its present form. There's going to be people that are going to have the money to start their own media, television stations or magazines or newspapers that don't come from that kind of a corporate structure, conservative control, government, all that stuff. I see that's going to happen, because the people are, even regular people are getting really tired of all the bullshit on the media. Just, you know, look at how the media is, what's gone on in the last 10 years. Journalism is just slid way downhill. Most of it, they're selling out. You know.
It's true. Let's pray that it does turn over.
Well, I think it's going to. I think people are getting so tired of it that, you know, they don't watch the TV so much. A lot of people, at least news shows, they're not reading the paper as much. And, but people want the information, you know. And it just boils down to, how do you get the information out? Maybe the internet is one way.